Okay, live round two.
Okay, hello. Welcome back. Or welcome for the first time. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name's Ethan. I'm Willow. And we are PhD students here at Blandy and at the University of Virginia down in Charlottesville. And so we both are PhD students in environmental science. We study things.
I
study trees.
Yeah. And we both love to knit. And so this is where this idea came from. And so today will be the first day talking about some of the critters who are on the cow. And so I'll be talking about bees, which there is a bee on the cow. And then next week Mia will be talking about butternut trees. And then the week after, Ethan will be talking about black gum. And then another graduate student will be talking about moths. So, yeah. Does anyone have any questions before we get started talking about bees?
This is the bee.
That is the bee. Cool. So again, I'm Willow, and I study specifically the chimney bee, and so that is the bee that is on the cow, and they are a species, they're technically a solitary bee. So a lot of times when we think about bees, we think about social species, so like maybe you think about a honeybee or a bumblebee where there's a queen, and workers that help with reproduction, but most bee species, actually 90% of them, are solitary, and so that means there's no queen, and each mom is out there doing everything on her own. She's collecting all the pollen, she's making the home, she's flying back and forth, feeding herself, and laying the eggs too. So there's lots of different types of bees. I'm going to show a bunch of different handouts, and if you want to come up and take any of these, you're more than welcome to. This is a really great resource that has some of the different, we call them morpho groups, so the different bees that look like different ways. So here we have a lot of, you probably have seen bumblebees, big fuzzy bees. The bees that I study, the chimney bee, they are also big fuzzy bees, but they're actually not out right now. So over there, this is a great prop. You see maybe you've been to the bee wall or seen the bee wall here at Blandy. So what that is an adobe wall, an adobe art installation, and the bees actually nest in there. And so my work actually studies, so they actually, because the soil is so hard that they nest in, they actually have to go and collect water, and they bring the water back, wet up the soil, and they're able to dig it out. And so I study why they nest in really hard soil, basically. So if you're interested in learning more about chimney bees, I'll talk more about them, but I have this little zine up here too where you can learn about them. They're called chimney bees because they make a chimney in front of their nests, which is very cool. So when they are digging into the ground, that wetted soil that they've made, it's kind of like a clay. So what they do is just similar to mud daubers, which maybe you've seen. There's actually one, she's right there, but she's also nesting on the other side of the styrofoam. Yep. And so you see the mud that they make in the organ pipes. That's what they're also called. They kind of do a similar thing, where as they're excavating and taking out this mud, they actually pack it into these chimneys that can actually be almost 3 inches long. And they're not very sturdy, they sometimes get knocked off, and we actually don't really know why they make them, so kind of a silly thing about them. The other unique thing about chimney bees, and actually a lot of different other solitary bees, is that they aggregate. And so what that means is that even though each one has her own nest, they nest really closely together. So if you're around Blandy next spring in May-ish, I would highly recommend going over to the bee wall, where you will see thousands of bees flying around and going into their nests. So there's lots of different bees, and there's a bunch of different groups that also nest and live together in these sort of group living situations, even though they're technically solitary. And so that's another part of my work, is wondering why do they live in a group? Why are they doing that when they don't necessarily work together? So I don't think there's anything else to talk about with them. Let's see. Oh, the other funny thing about them is that they're very short to live, which is actually a lot of the solitary species. So with honeybees and with bumblebees, you can bet them having this whole big cycle where they're quite long-lived, or at least the hives are long-lived. These guys, because the mom is doing everything all by herself, they actually only live for 4 to 6 weeks as adults. So they spend most of their life in the soil. So what the moms are doing is they're building these nests, and actually have some, we can pass these around. But these are the brood cells that they make underneath the ground. So they're about this big. So this is a little brood cell that has a baby bee inside of it. And so inside of the ground, she'll dig in, and then she creates, I like to call these rooms, like a little baby bee room. And so she makes the room, she'll dig it out, and actually, I don't know if anyone has done like ceramics or pottery, but there's a technique called like varnishing, where you like really smooth the clay and it's really shiny. And so inside, they actually do that, and it's like this very, very shiny, hardened area. So like, this is actually was in soil, and I was able to dig around it because it's hardened like that. And so when she creates this room, she'll then go and collect pollen. So she'll go on these many, many trips back and forth. So you're bringing in pollen, and then she'll lay one egg inside of there, and with enough food to feed the baby bee, and then she'll cap it, and then the baby bee will develop in there. And so bees go through the same life cycle as butterflies do. So they have a little tiny egg and a little kind of grub, and then they'll turn into a pupa and come out as an adult bee. So if you guys want to look at these, you can pass them around and take a look at the brood cells. I'll start here. You feel free to grab them also if you want to feel them. Yeah, what else is, for the other really cool thing with bees, and this is all different types of bees, they actually can choose the sex of their offspring, so whether they're male and female. So the bee, when she's making those little rooms, the females actually need more pollen and need more food, so she'll make a little bit of a bigger room, pack it with more pollen, and then actually choose to lay a female egg, which is pretty wild and crazy that they can do that. Yeah, does anyone have any questions about the chimney bees? Yeah.
I assume they're native?
They are native, yep, they're a native species, yep.
And if you were to encourage bees like that in your yard or garden, do they prefer, I mean, you have the mud wall, but what would I look for?
They love to have like bare soil, so ground nesting bees, so actually 75% of bee species nest in the ground, and so having bare soil is kind of important to them. Bees they like all different types of soils. We don't really know. They like, it depends. Like these guys like to have a somewhat higher clay content. Other bees like only sand. So it really depends, but having some sort of like bare soil is helpful to encourage them. I actually have also these pamphlets from Xerces Society. So these are about bringing pollinators into your garden. So if you want to learn more about them, they have really great information about all different types of bees, including cavity nesters too. So that's another type, but yeah, they love to have, these guys in particular love compacted soils, like really hard compacted soil. So you'll find them, they actually love being near people because we love to make hard and compacted soils. So you'll see them next to buildings, under bridges, that's like one, they just love to have that hardened soil. In areas where humans have not made their houses and things, they like upturned trees. So like really any of that compacted soil they really like. Yeah. Anyone else have questions about chimney bees? Yeah.
I have one. It's a question I know. It's an answer I know, but I think it might be good to ask. Do they sting?
Great question, Erica. A great question. They do not sting. We think that they are capable of it, but they actually don't. They're very friendly, and if you go out and hang out with them, which I encourage everyone to do, they will not sting. They run into you, they're very clumsy, they are really uncoordinated, but yeah, they do not sting. They do not have a mean, I would say bone in their body, but they don't have any bones in their body, so. Yeah.
How widespread? Would we have them and not know it?
Yeah, so they're in all of the eastern US. So that's the thing that's interesting about them, which is why I have, why I study them, is that their nesting sites aggregating and being together, they're like definitely a spectacle. Like when they're all out, like you hear them, you see them, they're buzzing all around, and they're hard to miss, but they're only out for a very short window. So you can miss them because you maybe didn't stumble upon them. And sometimes they all are kind of nesting in a central area, so you might like go out and see them in your yard, but not necessarily know where they're nesting. And that's pretty common for a lot of these ground nesting bees, because a lot of them nest solitarily, so by themselves, and there's not a lot known about ground nesting bees because they're so hard to find.
What do they look like?
They look like a bumblebee. Let me see, there's one in here.
Like a bumblebee?
They look similar to a bumblebee.
Are they as big as a bumblebee?
Yeah, carpenter bees are like the big ones with the shiny. They're smaller than carpenter bees. I actually don't think I have one. They look very similar to. So these guys aren't, but this is what they look similar. Yeah. Yeah. These guys. And then here's a bumble. I'll walk around, show everyone. We can look at some bumblebees too. These are bumblebees. These guys. Yep. You've probably seen them. Yep. Chunky little guys, very furry, furry all over. So the way that you tell the difference between bumblebees and chimney bees, bumblebees have on their hind leg, and I'll bring these all around to show you guys, but on their hind leg where they collect pollen, they have a special, like it's specially shaped where it's flat, and you maybe have seen like honeybees do this too, where they pack on the pollen, it's like a little pollen ball. Chimney bees, their legs are just covered with hair, so they're just collecting pollen all over. I feel like I have a picture.
So if you see a bee that looks like it flew through a sack of flour, probably a
That's
chimney bee.
probably a chimney bee. They're very like, oh yeah, here's, like their legs are like covered with pollen. Yeah. Yeah. Walk around with these guys. Does anyone else have any questions about bees or chimney bees? Here are the bumblebees, and then the chimney bee. Here are bumblebees. And this guy, this is not chimney, but they're similar to that. This is what they look like. That's one that's close to your leg, but not the same one. But this is what a chimney bee looks like. So very similar to bumblebees, but you can see all that pollen that's on the hind leg.
Bird bag.
That's more
It's gonna take me forever.
And then
Just,
that's why
I'm doing a tubular cast on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is the scrap yarn. But they are the two. No worries. You can kind of see it out. Instead of dark and light, it's light and dark. What are you?
we love this here. Feel free to take them
Very
off.
similar. Yeah. So is your background going to be
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do, yes, my background will be white. I think I'm gonna be good.
This kind of cast on beanie, and so I guess it's different. It looks like a cast on. What I do, they're like little rocks.
And so is the corners